The story begins with the main actor, Charles' son. He is the son of a Taipei triad gangster boss. While baking a cake, Charles is surprised by the appearance of three masked men who want to kill him. Soon after, two of Charles' men arrive to clean up the bodies of the perpetrators. And here comes Big Son, Charles' father, and the big boss of the triad gangsters. Worried about his son's safety, Big Son came when he should have been hiding. Big Son wondered why they were only three people and attacked Charles in his house. Charles shouldn't have killed the three so that he could get information about this attack. Although there was no certainty, Charles was so sure that the culprit was Sleepy Chan, who wanted to avenge Sing's death at the docks. Suddenly, Big Son was shot from outside. After the attack, Big Son's right-hand man, Yuan, secured all the assets. Meanwhile, Big Son is still in a coma. Charles was convinced that Sleepy Chan was the culprit. Yuan asked Charles to focus on protecting his mother like his father said. Charles must know his mother is the key to their strength. Long story short, Charles flies to Los Angeles to meet his mother. Next, we are introduced to a student who is an online taxi driver named Bruce Sun, and this is Bruce's mother named Eileen. Bruce finished his exams early, not because he was smart, but because he needed time to earn money to pay for his studies. Bruce went to his best friend, TK, to borrow money. Actually, his mother had given him the money, but Bruce used it for acting lessons. Not having $5,000 as he requested, TK invited Bruce to become a drug dealer. Getting off the plane, a flight attendant sent information about Charles to someone. After stopping to buy a cake, Charles came to his mother's house in Los Angeles. Since no one opened the door, Charles went inside. But suddenly a masked killer appeared to attack Charles. A fierce fight ensued. Finally, Charles could defeat him, but he didn't kill him right away. After being given a cigarette, Charles forced him to open his mouth whether Sleepy Chan had sent him. He laughed and then said that eradicating evil must be comprehensive, and it turned out that Charles' mother was Eileen. She was happy to see her eldest son again after a long separation. Coming from a gangster family, Eileen herself seems normal when she sees a dead body in her house. But she was shocked when she heard Big Son had been shot. Eileen argued that even though Sleepy Chan was the family's rival gangster for the past 20 years, it didn't mean that this attack was carried out by them. Charles saw a picture of his brother looking weak. His mother argued that his brother didn't know about their real family, because Eileen had hidden everything. Not inheriting gangster blood, Bruce wanted to become an actor. To protect his mother and brother, Charles would search for local gangsters in the region. TK brought Bruce to a drug dealer who supplied his stuff, led by a woman named May. Bruce was finally officially accepted as a drug dealer. At the same time, Charles came there to look for a hired gangster. Suddenly, Charles found his brother here. Bruce was surprised because the man who dragged him was his brother, but Charles' move to bring his brother home was denied and rejected by the gangsters. At the same time, the masked assassins were back in action. Charles was dragged before May. After seeing his identity, May was surprised because Charles' son was known as a triad legend. His father was the head of Jet Dragon, the largest triad in Taiwan, known for being violent and brutal. Bruce was also surprised because he was actually the son of a gangster boss who had a lot of wealth. Charles offered May and her men a job with high pay, but May refused. Charles was beaten again until the gang was exhausted. That's when Charles got up and immediately beat him. One of the masked killers set off explosives. Bruce was held as a hostage by May, but suddenly this happened. Big explosion had there. Then May was killed by them. Because Charles' face was covered, they couldn't find him. Bruce quickly took Charles from there with the help from TK. They returned home while Eileen was mutilating the killer's body. And after that, the movie continued to episode 2. Here, Bruce just realized that he was part of a gangster family who was closed to blood and corpses. Charles wants to involve his brother in this gangster war, but his mother disagrees because Bruce is a gentleman who doesn't know the dark side world. Bruce should focus on his studies as if nothing ever happened, even though Eileen had told Charles to take Bruce to campus. Still, Charles wanted to introduce Bruce to the gangster world. Bruce was told to deliver a suitcase containing the killer's body parts, while the headpieces were deliberately left in the car. Bruce delivered the suitcase to Baldy, the beast collector. Because Baldy told Bruce to deliver the lizards back, Charles finally intervened to teach him a lesson. Baldy reminded him about respecting fellow Triads according to the Guanxi Code of Ethics. Asked about the identity of the killer, he claimed not to know, but mentioned an intermediary nicknamed Spider. After Charles left quietly, Baldy contacted someone to tell them where Charles had gone. In the Triad world, Guanxis are very important, as they are always surrounded by murderers and thieves who can disrupt business. The deputy district attorney of Los Angeles, named Alexis, came to the scene. Although this nightclub didn't have CCTV, Alexis saw the camera above right in front of the alley. The police investigated, including TK's house, which was visited by 2 officers. Meanwhile, Eileen seeks information on the murderer from a community of mothers who like to play mahjong. Charles provided information on the Jet Dragon organization formed by his father from scratch. Starting from the drugs business, weapons, to smuggling, Charles is ambitious to destroy Sleepy Chan to his lair. Although his mother educated Bruce gently, the fact is that gangster DNA runs in his blood. Charles came to the Spider's house, while Bruce waited in the car. Because there was a birthday party going on, he saw some men enter wearing dinosaur costumes, but carrying guns. Spider was surprised by the appearance of Charles, who wanted to know the identity of the headpiece he showed. However, Bruce appeared behind the glass, warning of the coming danger. Charles faced these killers alone. They managed to escape, though Charles fails to get the identity of the group. Alexis pressured TK into revealing the identities of the 2 men covered in blast dust from the club. Charles then drives Bruce to campus. While enjoying the food, a security guard noticed that Charles' shirt was full of blood. This is followed by the policeman and Alexis coming. It turns out that Alexis knows Charles, as they grew up together in Taipei. They were suspicious of the hair coming out of the bag Charles was carrying. Watching from inside the classroom, Bruce was worried that his brother was in danger. As a result, he released the monitor lizard he was carrying, making an uproar throughout the campus. Charles and Bruce used this opportunity to escape. Back at home, Eileen scolded her 2 sons. Eileen gave the name and address of the killer that she got from the shoe store. Charles remembered the red ribbon his father had seen in the killer's hair. It was exactly the same as the one used by the killer who came to his mother's house. Suddenly, Alexis was there. Alexis admits that she already knew Charles and his brother were in the club that was blown up. The beautiful prosecutor also knew what happened to his father in Taipei. Alexis hopes Charles will tell her what really happened, but Charles is reluctant, even though they have been best friends since childhood. Back on campus, Bruce was surprised by the appearance of a woman covered in tattoos staring at him. And after that, the movie moves on to episode 3. Disguised as a service clerk, Eileen breaks into the masked killer's house. She finds a red ribbon in his room. Suddenly, one member of this group appears there. Eileen prepared to confront him, but instead, she screams hysterically. On the other hand, while making foods, Charles was contacted by Yuan, who wanted to know the conditions in Los Angeles. Despite the mess, his mother and brother were fine. Meanwhile, his father is still in a coma. Yuan received information that one of the gangster bosses leading the Gold Committee had been killed. Charles suspects Sleepy Chan is working with a group of gangsters who wear masks and red ribbons as their symbol. Not only kakui or Chinese crullers, it turned out that Charles made curry for the head of the masked killer. Charles asked Yuan to send 2 of his men to Lei to help him. To buy time, Charles is going to have peace talks with Sleepy Chan. Suddenly, Alexis texts him asking him to lunch. Intending to help him, Alexis understands Charles is in a dangerous position. She needs his cooperation to reveal the mastermind behind the attack on him. Although Alexis is not a cop, Charles considers the prosecutor to be part of law enforcement, which he doesn't like. Suddenly, his mother contacted Charles because Bruce wasn't answering her messages and calls. She starts to worry, even though Eileen says she doesn't need Charles' help to find Bruce. But Alexis thinks it means his mom really needs him. Long story short, the two of them arrive to search for Bruce's location. Then Bruce's friend, Grace, thinks Bruce looks terrified of a woman with tattoos kidnapping Bruce. She thought it was part of his acting lesson. Eileen recognizes the woman after Grace makes sure the crane tattoo on her right arm. Apparently, Bruce and his best friend, TK, are being locked up by this woman. It turns out that this woman named June, his May's sister who wants revenge. Both of TK's thumbs were broken. To get the location of the woman's house they were looking for, Charles was invited by his mother to a mahjong house. Make no mistake, the old ladies who are in this place come from various circles. Starting from official affairs, criminals to tailors, there are here. About the incident at the club, Eileen suspected that the White Stork group was behind it. The big drug dealer was from St. Gabriel Valley, and Tony Tang is the liaison, disguised as the owner of the Alhambra seafood restaurant. Bruce had assured June that he and his brother weren't involved in May's death. Not believing her, Bruce was about to be taught a lesson. Bruce was forced to tell her the location of Charles' address. Arriving at the restaurant, the son and mother clashed again. Charles asked Eileen to wait in the car, but still, she entered through the front door, while Charles went through the back door. Eileen saw the waiter to be told to call her boss, and here comes Tony Tang, surprised when Eileen mentions the drugs he smuggled in the fish's stomach. Eileen is invited to his office. Here, Eileen sees Tony's drug smuggling process. She thought they were working for the police. Eileen sees on the CCTV screen her son struggling with Tony's men, even though Tony doesn't realize. Then, Eileen goes home to get free lobster, while Charles gets the address of the White Stork's warehouse. Charles is assigned to save his brother, while Eileen will find a safe house for them. Bruce invited TK to run away, because he had given the woman a fake address. It was TK who leaked Bruce's home and college address. They kick the gate, hoping someone will help. But June was there. June tells the story of her life that was abandoned with after their parents gone. Suddenly Charles appears there. When they want to fight, Bruce prevented it because it was a misunderstanding. The assassins wanted to kill Charles, but May was the unfortunate victim. Sleepy Chan was the archenemy of Bruce's family. Being on the same side, they finally teamed up to hunt them down. Now gathered in their new home, Bruce introduced June to his mother. Then they had a meal together. Eileen allowed Bruce to get involved in this matter, but he also had to focus on his studies. June tells him that there was a man who asked for a tattoo, and he happened to be wearing a red ribbon. The inscription was to eradicate crime thoroughly, the same inscription that Eileen found in the masked killer's house. Charles was convinced that the killers were highly coordinated, that all the gangsters were afraid of them. Eileen already had the identity of Tony Tang. His first wife was Sleepy Chan's second cousin. They ran an illegal casino. For this one, June was going to finish him off to provoke Sleepy Chan out. The next day, Alexis was told about the seafood restaurant. It turns out that Tony Tang was found dead, and one of the Red Ribbon members was posing as a cop with a tattoo on his right arm. Two of Charles' team, the girl named Thing and Bald Blood, arrive in LA to talk about the war between the gangsters. Eileen didn't want Bruce to be involved, even though Charles asked her to come along, because he was part of this triad family. Singh was informed that Sleepy Chan was ready to meet. The triad boss would bring his son, Lee, and his men. They suspected Sleepy Chan was angry after Charles killed one of his men. The meeting was planned to be held at Neutral's place, but they had to be careful in case Sleepy Chan and his henchmen betrayed them. Bruce proposed the meeting be held at a Korean spa that was open 24 hours, with no weapons allowed. As a Korean, TK claimed to know his crew, and by this time Sleepy Chan had landed in Leh. The next morning, Bruce came to campus escorted by Blood. Because of the delinquent tuition fees, Blood immediately took out 3 wads of money to pay Bruce's tuition fees for 3 semesters at once. Claiming to be his uncle, Blood saw Bruce, who was being approached by Grace. Inside the Red Ribbon, Alexis found a QR code that could be opened with Tony Tang's cell phone. The problem is that the phone is locked. TK invites Charles to meet the Korean gangster boss to ask for approval to use his place. And this is the figure of Lee, who came to ensure the security of the place. The Korean mafia agreed after they gave money. Sleepy Chan has agreed to all the terms in the meeting, except for one thing. It turned out that they didn't want Eileen to be present at this historical meeting, because the presence of women is considered an insult. After all, Charles didn't want his mother to be in danger. To make a long story short, Charles insists on bringing Bruce along to the meeting to protect their family. While Bruce gets closer to Grace, Charles doesn't dare to reveal his heart to Alexis. From the mafia boss's fingerprints, Alexis was able to open his cell phone, including the QR code on it. Just as she reads the message, the phone suddenly turns off, but she could see that something was about to happen at the Korean spa. Having just contacted her colleague in the police, Alexis was suddenly attacked by a masked killer. Alexis could attack his eyes with spicy chips. Charles and Bruce, with the help of Blood and Sing, were ready for a meeting. If something happens to him, Charles tells Blood to take care of his mother and brother. But without realizing it, Bruce is immediately kidnapped. Lee asked Charles who entered the spa room. Charles just realized his brother was kidnapped as collateral, but it was Bruce who had a meeting with Sleepy Chan. Bruce was used as a negotiator. He had to take the cigarette given by this triad boss. In fact, Sleepy Chan said that actually their enemies were the same. Therefore, they must unite. Unexpectedly, a masked killer suddenly emerged from the sand to kill Sleepy Chan. Hearing that his brother was in danger, Charles immediately ran to save him. A fierce battle ensued, so with Blood Deng Sing, who tried to fight the Red Ribbon Group. Charles and Lee eventually teamed up to confront them. The masked criminals were slaughtered, leaving one for interrogation. After taking off his mask, he suddenly pulled out an explosive. The wounded Charles tried to get out of the place, and after that the movie continued to episode 5. Eileen was very worried after seeing the news of the many victims who died in the massacre in the spa. Not long after, Bruce arrived accompanied by Blood and Sing, but they didn't know where Charles was. Because of Sleepy's last words in Mandarin, which said LOL, Eileen asked Blood to find Charles, while Sing escorted Bruce to his campus. It turned out that Charles was at Alexis' house after he showed up to save her. To contact his family, Charles needs the cell phone he left in the spa locker. Charles is surprised that Alexis is under a similar attack from the Red Ribbon Group. Although not as smart as Charles, the deputy prosecutor can still cook an egg. Alexis thinks she can ruin her career by accommodating criminals like Charles because she doesn't want anything to happen to him. Alexis left again to bring Charles' cell phone and a change of clothes. Sing begins to understand that what Sleepy Chan actually said was not lol, but laluo, which means Rolodex. In conclusion, the Red Ribbon gangsters were hunting her mother, because Rolodex was Eileen's nickname. Eileen was looking for information from a gun-running mafia named Hong. Suddenly, the Red Ribbon gang surrounds Eileen and takes her away. Alexis manages to get Charles' cell phone from the police car. Bored in the apartment, Charles cleans up Alexis' house and looks for ingredients to make a cake. One of the Red Ribbon gangster bosses claims to know all about the triad leaders who hide their identities despite decades of secrecy. There is only one person who knows, that is Eileen. Eileen was forced to write down all the triad leaders in the world. Undaunted by his threats, she invites him to negotiate. After finishing his cake, Alexis comes in with Charles' cell phone. She was mesmerized by Charles' delicious homemade cake. To find out who they are, Charles asks Alexis for help in finding a list of Asian businessmen who were murdered 2 months ago. Coming to the Mahjong house, Bruce gets information about a mafia named Hong, who might know his mother's whereabouts. Eileen will give Sleepy Chan's entire business network in Leh as long as her family not in trouble again. But she claims not to be interested in money at all. Claiming to be a gangster group called Boxer, she wanted to burn all the triad's money. Because his cell phone is dead, Charles still has trouble contacting his mother and brother. Alexis loves Charles more and more until they finally make love. Successfully finding Hong, Bruce forced him to tell them where his mother was. After having both hands stuck in iron, Hong finally opened his mouth and confessed to framing his mother to the group. Blood was apparently watching the last location his mother was taken by them. He told this to Bruce and Sing. Without fear, blood would go in there. This group of masked assassins claimed to have attacked Big Son, and Charles had brought them to Eileen. Despite being threatened with harm, Eileen kept relaxed, unwilling to give them the list of triad bosses. Suddenly, they dragged Blood and threatened to kill him if Eileen was still stubborn. Blood said he was sincere and kept loyal to the Son family until he was finally shot dead. Now, they threatened to kill Bruce, which makes Eileen threaten back. When Eileen wanted to be shot, her foot appeared. Bruce brought dozens of old ladies to the headquarters. Eventually, Eileen survives, although Bruce doesn't believe that Blood is dead. Now they know Eileen's weakness is Bruce. The brutal massacre of Asian businessmen is still an unsolved mystery. None of the victims were recognized by Charles. Alexis again asked Charles for his cooperation, but Charles refused to get involved. After Charles left, Alexis contacted someone to be activated the bugs. After getting the prosecutor's approval, Alexis taps Charles' cell phone to track his position. Eileen is happy that Charles is home safe. Now they need to come up with a plan to solve this. Bruce was asked to memorize all the names of the triad bosses that his mother had kept secret. This is also the reason why Eileen went missing with Bruce, while Charles was with his father. This list must be remembered well by Bruce so that the Boxer group will not dare to kill him. And after that, the movie continued to episode 6. After memorizing the list of names of triad bosses, Eileen told him to name the names of the gangster leaders and their territories. Now they have to hide Bruce, because if the triads find out that Bruce knows their identity, Bruce will certainly be killed. Safe from the Boxers, but not the triads. Charles praised Bruce's smart action by bringing dozens of old ladies to save him. Unbeknownst to Bruce, Eileen had returned to Taiwan. A luxury resort was rented by Charles as a sanctuary for Bruce and his team. Because all this time, Bruce and his mother lived in simplicity. Now Bruce was like the son of a rich man. Someone was seen from the car watching Charles and Bruce's activities. It wasn't yet clear what Eileen was planning, but it seemed that she came to each triad group with a little gift. Bruce asked for his brother's approval to take Grace, but Charles allowed it, because he thought Grace was just a student who was in love with his brother. It turns out that the two people watching in the car are police officers assigned by Alexis. Although in the real world Bruce can't shoot, in the video game he was able to defeat Charles. Bruce invites his brother to relax for a while. Alexis starts to get jealous because her team says there are 3 women in the villa. Grace claims her parents are restaurant workers who were illegal immigrants smuggled into America by Snakehead. Her parents' fate was tragic due to the cruelty of the smugglers from the Triad gang. After 15 years, Eileen was able to see her mother again. During her time in America, Eileen didn't know that her sister had died of cancer. Eileen was surprised that Big Son didn't tell her, even though she had said that if there was anything about her family, she asked to be notified. Eileen came to her sister's grave to apologize for not being by her side. This is where Eileen is very angry with Big Son. Charles said that when he was 14 years old, he and his parents who were in a restaurant were attacked by gangsters. That was the first time Charles killed to protect his family. Suddenly, Charles got information on where TK was being held. He was going to pick him up. And because of that, Bruce was forbidden to leave this house. Bruce asked Charles to use his brain first before using his muscles. Unexpectedly, the 2 policemen watching the villa had been killed. Then the red ribbon was left there. Meanwhile, Alexis sees Charles' movements as he leaves for a location. Grace invites Bruce to go out for a while. She ignored her brother's prohibition. The place they go to is a kind of humanitarian foundation run by many young volunteers. But the real facts are revealed because this place is managed by a Red Ribbon group, Aka Boxer, and Grace is one of its members. Bruce was furious because they had killed Blood and almost killed his brother and mother as well. Grace argued that her Boxer organization wanted to eliminate the Triad because so far they had become oppressors. Receiving a mandate from heaven, her group wanted to protect the Chinese people. Not only Asia, this organization has spread to Europe, America, and Australia. Grace invites Bruce to work together to eradicate all Triad leaders, including Bruce's family. These 2 children are victims of Triad brutality. In fact, Grace's parents also met their fate due to their depraved actions. Having no choice, Bruce asks for his mother and Charles to be forgiven if he helps him. But Grace couldn't forgive Charles, who had killed many people. Finally, Bruce confessed to having a list of the Triad's bosses. Grace promised to let Charles go. The police team was surprised that Charles called Alexis' cell phone. Charles wants to apologize, but Alexis is in the wrong place and he hangs up. Charles becomes angrier, taking out his anger on the dozens of gangsters holding TK hostage. No one was allowed to escape his brutality. TK was taken home again. Meanwhile, Eileen finally met Big Son. She used a needle to prick his finger. She vents her anger and promises to seize the only thing Big Son cares about most, the business empire. Unexpectedly, Big Son wakes up from consciousness, and after that the movie continues to episode 7. With the list given by Bruce, the Boxer group carried out a simultaneous attack on the 6 Triad leaders. However, these Boxers didn't know that they had been framed because Eileen had given a warning. After that, Eileen returned to America. How did the Boxers know the identities of the Triad bosses? Bruce dodged leaking the list, and now the Triad bosses would come to America for a meeting to elect the head of the Dragon, the supreme leader of all the Triads. Her job is to govern the organization, keep the peace, and declare war. Big Son is against the new election, as he feels he will not be elected, and Eileen plans to force them to elect him. All she needed was for Charles to recognize him as the head of the Son family. Suddenly, the lights went out. It turned out to be Charles' friends, who surprisingly came with Big Son. He deliberately pretended to be in a coma, so that the enemy would think he was weak. Singh has been secretly giving her information on a regular basis, and Eileen is worried because her plans must have been overheard by her husband. The green Lamborghini was specially gifted to Bruce. Alexis and the police team had already sniffed out the Triad boss's plans. Big Son vehemently disapproves of Eileen becoming the head of the Dragons, as he prefers Charles. Not only that, Bruce would be brought back home to Taipei despite Eileen's disapproval. Bruce didn't like the rambunctious style of Charles' friends. Bruce persuaded his brother not to follow his father's wishes, which didn't suit his heart, because he knew Charles would rather cook cakes than cook people's brains. Eileen herself had realized from the beginning that Bruce would leak her name list to the Boxer, but she stuck to her decision to become the head of the Dragon, even though the risk was great. Bruce secretly met Grace to tell her the location of the Triad meeting in Leh. Bruce took this step to protect his mother and brother from his own father's cruelty. Alexis asked the police team to prepare all their troops in a massive arrest plan. Armed with the bugs installed on Charles' cell phone, they can know the location of the meeting. Long story short, all the Triad bosses started arriving at a hotel in Leh, but Charles was busy in the kitchen tasting his dinner. All the waiters came to serve him. Unable to stay silent, Bruce decided to also come to the meeting location by inviting June and TK, who insisted on coming along. The 3 of them entered through the kitchen. Big Son stood up to ask for the approval of all the gangster bosses, because he thought Charles was suitable to be the new Dragon Head. Suddenly, Eileen appeared with a new look to run for Dragon Head. According to Eileen, choosing Charles was the same as choosing Big Son, because Charles is basically a soldier who is loyal to his father. As the one who thwarted the attack on them, Eileen felt that she was worthy. Not long after, the Special Forces team began to arrive at the meeting location. Bruce and his 2 colleagues saw a Boxer disguised as a waiter setting off explosives. A trolley of cakes brought into the meeting location turned out to have explosives. Before they all died, Bruce pulled the cake for safekeeping, and finally, the war began. Eileen immediately went into action to finish him off. One by one, the Red Ribbon members were eliminated. Eileen left with Bruce, while Charles was with his father. June takes revenge on Grace for her sister's death. TK rescues Eileen and Bruce to escape the scene. They return home. This is where Big Son is very angry with Eileen, especially with Bruce. That's why he was assigned to kill his own brother. And after that, the movie continues to the final episode. One of the Triad bosses, named Frank Ma, is thrown into a holding cell. He claims to be ready to cooperate with Alexis in order to be guaranteed a safe return home. Frank asked her to hunt down Big Son first to be thrown into prison. Hiding in an apartment, Bruce just wants his mother to be his mother again, who doesn't deal with gangsters. But Eileen is adamant about reclaiming what is rightfully hers. Suddenly, Charles appeared, venting his anger at Bruce. Although his father had given him orders, Charles was unable to kill his brother. They wondered why the police could also know the location of the meeting. Charles was angry because Bruce proposed to kill their father to solve this problem. Eileen reveals a fact that the first murder committed by Charles when he was 14 years old was actually a test deliberately arranged by his father. The incident was designed to make Charles a murderer, even though his heart refused. Now, Charles must bravely confront his abusive father, who wants to kill his own son in front of their mother's eyes. Charles realizes that his phone has been tapped by Alexis, and that's why the police know the location of his meeting. Returning to his father, Charles admits that he can't bear it. He himself said he had to protect his family, but instead wanted to kill his own son. Charles refuses return back to Taiwan, choosing to become a chef rather than another murderous gangster who is never satisfied with fighting for wealth and power. A disappointed, Big Son finally assigned Sing to finish Bruce off. Unable to stay silent, Charles killed his two friends to pursue Sing, but he failed and was eventually arrested by the police. Charles asked Alexis to let him go, because his mother and brother were in danger. The deputy prosecutor refused, however, before Charles told her where his father was hiding. Eileen is shocked by the appearance of Sing, who is hunting Bruce. Unable to leave her youngest son in danger, Eileen fights back. A fistfight ensued until Eileen finally managed to finish Sing off. Returning home, Bruce was surprised to see his mother. Suddenly, Alexis called Bruce from the police station and asked Bruce to tell her where Big Son was hiding. She promised to let Charles go. Bruce finally agreed, but he wanted to talk to his brother first without being recorded. Bruce asked Charles to tell him where their father was, because he was going to kill him. Despite being considered stupid and not good with guns, Bruce has the courage and intelligence that his brother lacks. Suddenly, Bruce tells Alexis that Brother Son is not cooperating with the police. Long story short, Bruce pointed a gun at his father. Big Son began to realize that he couldn't underestimate his youngest son, who was thought to be lame. Therefore, Big Son will take him to Taiwan to take Charles' place. From lizards to save Charles, then mahjong players, to utilizing a group of boxers to slaughter the Triad. All because of Bruce's brilliant idea. Bruce refused to follow his father's wishes. He opened fire, leaving a cell phone, so that Big Son would have no choice but to call the emergency room. And eventually, Big Son was arrested. Bruce asked his father not to bother his mother and Charles anymore. Alexis was happy that Big Son was finally caught, and Charles was released. Now Charles can focus on his desire to become a chef. But Eileen would still go to Taiwan to lead Jet Dragon, fixing their family business to be legal and clean. Although it was hard, Bruce finally agreed. Before that, Eileen came to the hospital disguised as a nurse to inject poison to make Big Son diabetic, so that he had to be injected with insulin regularly. And then, this series ended.